Are you ready for some intense melee action? The WarZ is supposedly a survival horror MMO that immerses players in a zombie-infested post-apocalyptic world. Now, this is the first line of the Steam store page, and this line, in and of itself, is already quite questionable. WarZ is made by Hammerpoint Interactive, and only just got out on Steam. This zombie survival-esque game boasts quite a lot of promises on said Steam store page, but, well, let's just have a look at them, shall we? Here we have the first version of the Steam store page that survived a good day or so. Supposedly this has huge persistent worlds of between 100 to 400 square kilometers. Now they updated this to say that their first map is over 100 square kilometers in size, and they do indeed only seem to have one map. This map isn't honestly all that big, and 100 square kilometers seems a bit of a stretch. Not off to a good start. They mentioned that you could learn dozens of skills, although this too was removed from the page, up to 100 players on a server, 2 different game modes, and a bunch of other things. Let's have a look at what it exactly contains and how it holds up. First of all, if you manage to get WarZ running at a proper frame rate, as it does seem to suffer from, well, not working all that well, you'll notice that the game doesn't look very good. The texture work in particular is horrendous. The animations are flat out hilarious at times, and overall it's just hardly a pretty picture. There is no story mode or anything of the sort in this game. A notable exception is the note system. Other players can leave notes around, which is a pretty interesting feature. Sadly, beyond this, there is little that actually immerses you into the game. There isn't much in the way of music, just seems to have random sound attacks, and as the game is largely about running around, this does miss the mark on making it feel interesting as you run from point A to point B. In fact, running is maybe not the best way to do things. As I said, running is something you'll be doing quite a lot. That is, as long as you stay in the remote forest areas. Once you get to any zone that seems to suffer from the zombie infection, you get to see what is likely the best feature of this game. WarZ is an excellent crawling butt-cheek simulator, and I'll definitely go out on a stretch and say that it's the best of its kind, that I've seen, anyway. At the sign of more than one zombie, it's likely best to just start crawling around at a really slow pace, in the hopes of getting anything useful before you just can't take it anymore. Movement itself isn't honestly done very well either. It feels sluggish and unresponsive, with terrible animations for running, crawling, or switching to a prone position. And yet this is what you'll be doing for the majority of your time. And that brings me to one of the prime flaws of this game. From as far as I can tell, having played it for roughly 10 hours, the spawning system is completely random. This means that most of the time you spawn in some distant corner of the map, and as you make your way past a bunch of trees and more trees, you might stumble upon a little village that contains 1 or maybe 2 chocolate bars, maybe even a bottle of water. But a simple melee weapon or a small handgun, well, it's not likely. At other times you get lucky and spawn right next to a military base, forcing you to do only a little bit of butt-cheek crawling, and in the off chance that no one else has looted this yet, you'll find a nice automatic weapon or pistol. This spawning system just makes most of the game dreadfully boring, as you run around with maybe a flashlight and pretty much find nothing useful for hours. It doesn't help that the map just doesn't seem large enough to contain the amount of players they are going for. On that note, they have just patched it and actually allowed 100 players as they promised on one map. But a system that spawns you near a village or outpost with simple, low-tier weaponry and food seems completely absent, making most of the game a simple run or crawl experience with really little of interest going on. Once you do get a melee weapon of the sort, such as the flashlight you spawn with, you'll get to experience the dreadful melee combat. Again, they completely miss the mark here, as it feels neither complicated, challenging, or just entertaining. There's very little force behind an attack, and really nothing about it is fun, as you'll smash that left mouse button for minutes until the zombie finally falls. Sadly, ranged combat isn't much better. If you do get lucky enough to find a ranged weapon, you certainly have quite a lot of power and feel a lot safer. But the ranged gameplay itself, again, just isn't very good. Pistols and rifles sound absolutely pathetic, and again there is no force behind a gunshot. Practically no recoil or impact on a shot. It doesn't feel in any way realistic, but it also doesn't feel in any way like a good arcade shooter. Whatever way it attempted to go there, it just failed. In addition to all of this, the AI of the zombies is pathetic to say the least. As long as you are prone, they never seem to really see you, unless you get really close. But the main issue here is that they are, literally and figuratively, brain dead. Jump on a fence and it seems completely impossible to track you, or at least, to get to you. Sometimes they get stuck on inanimate objects, in door openings, or just for the sake of it, and if you're fighting one of them you can pretty much just stand there with absolutely nothing to fear, as they pack no punch at all. Finally, if you do end up dying, be it for some random gunshots of players, running around with a horde of zombies behind you, or just from sliding off a rock incorrectly, you get to wait for 4 hours. Remember those 2 game modes I mentioned? Yeah, those don't do anything. They are the same, and either way, if you die, you lose all your gear and you can wait it out for 4 hours. Unless, of course, you like to purchase the Revive Now medicine that they have on offer. With real money, that is. In addition to paying for the game initially, it also heavily features a microtransaction system that allows you to buy basic necessities such as weaponry, bandages, and food. Which might actually explain the complete scarcity of any loot in the game in most places. And then there's also other completely fine aesthetic items and character skins. It's mainly a case of a lot of running and crawling, possibly finding a weapon of the sort, for some mediocre and subpar combat, dying, deleting your character, and starting over on a new server. I've tried to come up with something positive about WarZ, but I just can't do it. It should be obvious to anyone that this game is not done in any way. It's in an alpha, possibly early beta stage, yet they seem to think it's ready for release and purchase on Steam. And yet the Steam store page has no mention of it being an alpha or beta whatsoever. There's no atmosphere, the gameplay is uninteresting and badly executed in every single way. And unless you're playing with maybe a bunch of friends, I don't see how you can get any enjoyment out of this. It's a bad and pathetic game with a predatory business model, and I would advise avoiding this like the plague.